Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody!
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire, misunderstood. Hear 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices like the park fans drift in jerseys. Legacy bold, the Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline gleams, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. Ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Amazing Mets pregame show right here on the channel and on X. And as we are just over 48 hours until the MLB trade deadline is officially over, man, do we got rumors just spilling all over the place with Jeff Passan, John Heyman, Joel Sherman. Mets are in on this guy and that guy. They got their hand in a cookie jar, in every cookie jar. They did us going to town, yet nothing really has happened. You know, you got a couple of somewhat minor trades, but nothing crazy, right? None of the big names have come off the board. It's kind of the Mets has been the only one with Gregory Soto that has kind of been, you know, a solid kind of semi-big name in a bullpen. But it's going to be a psychotic next 48 to 50 hours, considering that so many big names from the rotation, bullpen, bats on the market are just going to fly off the board over the next 48 hours. It's just going to be absolutely insane. Yep. Reds got Ke'Bryan Hayes. That's interesting too. I didn't even see that just now when I was coming live. So the Reds got Ke'Bryan Hayes. That's an interesting move. Yeah, I don't like that Ke'Bryan Hayes move, considering that, you know, he's good defensively, but he can't hit to save his life. But that's the Reds' problem and not our problem. Yeah, Frank, I can care less, guy. Stop worrying about overpaying. Like seriously, like I am so sick and tired of this overpay nonsense. Like, do you really think you're gonna get the guy you want if you're not going to overpay? Like, let's, for example, the reports that have been coming out that the Mets are basically one of like 4 or 5 teams that are in the mix for Joan Duran of the Minnesota Twins. The Phillies are one of those teams. You're okay with Joan Duran going to the Phillies? And oh, by the way, not just this year, but for the next couple of years because he's under control? Like, you can't be okay with that. Like, this is not just about getting the Mets better. Like, you don't want some of these guys to go to the Phillies because they could beat you. Like, who would you rather face? The bum that they have now closing for the Phillies or Joan Duran? Like, who would you rather face in the 9th inning? Like, let's be real. Like, stop worrying about overpaying. Like, you have to. Yeah, Frank, but if you're gonna live or die on the Armstrong trade, okay. Well, what about the overpay apparently with Jared Kelenic in the Edwin Diaz deal? Why doesn't nobody bring that one up? That was an overpay at the moment, but it actually helped the Mets in the short term and long term. So you can't live or die off of that. The Pete Crow Armstrong wasn't David Stearns. It wasn't. It was the first year basically of Cohen owning the team. Basically, it wasn't even a full year of a season for Steve Cohen running things. You got to stop. Like, you can't live and die off of that. If you do, you're never going to make a trade that is worthwhile. Like, you expect to not overpay but get everything you want. It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, Frank, yeah, he was and still worked at Diaz. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, easy. See, that's ridiculous. Like, what is Acuna doing for this team? Like, as soon as Acuna made that catch, I was like, oh my God, look, you can't trade Acuna now. He can play center field. Why are we getting a center fielder, guys? It's not about the defense, right? If it was only about the defense, and by the way, guys, how was that runners in scoring position working out for the Mets last night, right? We have one game where people actually do things, and now we don't need a bat. Yet everybody and their mother was talking about a bat for the first 100 games of the season, and now all of a sudden it's about pitching. When I bitched and moaned about it for all season, you need a bat. Like, don't tell me that Luis Robert is not better than Tyrone Taylor. They're very basically lined up defensively. That's a fact. Like, you're not losing any defensive capabilities with Luis Robert in center field, right? But the potential of that bat and the potential power and the potential better offense. And again, by no means am I saying Luis Robert is going to come in here and just be what we've seen since the All-Star break, right? He crushes left-handed pitching. So if you want Tyrone Taylor to play center field, then I don't want to hear nobody complain about the offense, right? If Vientos continues to, he hits a grand slam, that's great. But how many offers are we going to get until we realize that this team needs help? We just got to stop. Well, there's no point in trading Alvarez for Robert. It shouldn't take that. Like people don't realize the upside that Robert brings over anybody else on this New York Mets team, right? I don't think limiting your center field defensively, let's say if they don't get the center fielder, but they get another starter and another bullpen arm. Let's just say that. But they don't get out and get a bat. You're okay with Jeff McNeil in center field, a guy who's barely played any center field. Yes, he made some nice plays. Yes, he looks decent in center field. But you're okay with that, where he doesn't have the range of a Tyrone Taylor, nor does he have the range of Luis Robert. He doesn't provide the offense that we technically need because McNeil has been in this lineup while they still struggle. Even though McNeil has been one of the better guys with the bat, it's not enough. You need more guys. No, Frank, we don't have guys, because if that was the case, like, we have 4 guys right now that are not doing the job. How many more guys you want to come up? They're not bringing up Drew Gilbert. They're not bringing up Ryan Clifford. They're not bringing up Jet Williams. Forget about that. You already got a logjam of 47 freaking different guys that in the infield. Do you really think you're just going to bring up Jet Williams and everything's going to be A-okay? Or Drew Gilbert or Ryan Clifford? No, I wouldn't trade Alvarez for Robert. That doesn't make sense, because Alvarez is your starting catcher. Acuna is what? You know what he starts? The wood on the bench. That's what he starts. His ass is on the bench more times than his foot's on the field. And don't think for a second that Luis Acuna in center field wasn't all about. Now, it was one because the way Mendoza managed that game was stupid. The way after Soto went out, he put in Tyrone Taylor, and then Tyrone Taylor came up in the lineup, and then he pinch hit, which made no sense. You just depleted your roster in the middle of the game way too early. So we had to put Acuna out there. It wasn't because they like Acuna there or they want him there. Clearly, if they really thought he can do it on a consistent basis, but once again, it's not about the defense, guys. If it was only about defense, we wouldn't be talking about a center fielder. But there isn't that many bats that are not center fielders. Like we talked about Brandon Lau the other day. That's a nice, solid move, but he's not a center fielder. He's a second baseman / corner outfielder, which would be fine. But where are you playing him in the corners? Like, you're gonna put him at second base and then put McNeil in center field? Like, that's a dangerous game to play. So we got to be careful. I just feel like if you're not going to trade Luis Acuna for Luis Robert, then what are you ever going to trade? Like, okay, let Robert go to the Phillies. They're going to get a high leverage bullpen arm. So let them do what they got to do, because if you don't get uncomfortable at the trade deadline, your trade deadline isn't good enough. That's a fact. Sorry to say, it might hurt your feelings, but I'm telling you guys the truth. And Frank, you can say all you want about him being smart, but when you got a top 3 team in baseball, you got to be uncomfortable, because if you do anything less than being uncomfortable because you don't want to trade in, because I don't know what you're going to do with all these guys. Your roster is basically set. The guys that you have in your farm system, besides Drew Gilbert, who is an actual center fielder, Jet Williams, okay, technically can be a center fielder. If you want to just leave those guys out, where are these other guys playing? Where are these guys playing? Acuna has nowhere to play. He never starts. He starts like once a week. He sits on the bench as a pinch runner. If that's who you want from Luis Acuna, is to be a pinch runner and defensive replacement, then you're wasting him as a top prospect, when another team will value him more and you can get something in return. Look, put it this way, guys. Luis Robert will be more impactful on this New York Mets team for the final 2 months than Acuna was all this year. If you don't think that's true, then you're a prospect hugger, and you want to win without doing anything. That's the problem. You want to give up, Joe Taylor and Marvin Jones that nobody's ever heard of in your farm system for guys that are going to impact your team to a level that you want. You can't have it both ways. You can't give, a pile of shit to a team and you want greatness in return, or really good in return. It just doesn't happen. And oh, by the way, you got 48 hours. All these guys, why do you think they haven't come off the board yet? Because the competition is very, very tough. That means Luis Robert, if it was only Vientos for Luis Robert or Acuna for Luis Robert, it would have been done. But obviously, the White Sox are going back and forth, because right now, the front runner, right now, according to multiple reports, the Mets are the front runner for Robert right now. But the Phillies are right there. So you don't think the White Sox, after they hang up from the Mets and saying, listen, this is what you offer, can you do better? Can you give us a better prospect, even if it is a 1-for-1? Like, you got to do something. Well, okay, why do you want to trade Tidwell? Why do you want to trade McLean? Why? Like McLean makes no sense, and the White Sox don't want pitching. Like that. I mean, for all we know, we can send Luis Acuna. Like, why do you want to send McLean? He's probably one of the most ready guys in our farm system. But you rather trade him, except for Acuna, who plays once a week. Well, easy. See, but again, that is a bet where if they go that route, if they trade for Lau, then I understand keeping McNeil and Taylor as a platoon in center field, because you got your bat, right, in center field. And I'm assuming, I already said this for a while, Acuna is gone. There is no doubt in my mind the Mets aren't getting any one of these names that we've been talking about for a while now. Brandon Lau, Luis Robert, Joan Duran, a lot of these big names, you're not getting them without Luis Acuna part of the deal. It's just that simple. Well, Emerson, here's the problem with Quan. What has been the biggest problem with the New York Mets this year? Hitting with runners in scoring position. They're still bottom 3 in the league. Quan doesn't do that. He's not a run producer. He's a table setter. You know how many guys we leave on base? The whole team is a bunch of table setters. We need somebody who's a run producer. And we have those guys, but they're not doing the job. We need somebody that kind of rattles the cage a little bit. And I'm not saying Luis Robert could be that or will be that. But at least there's the potential of power of a guy who can be a run producer. Right? By no means do I think do you think I'm going to get overly excited about a Luis Robert trade? No, I'm going to get overly excited because Stearns actually made a move. He targeted a guy and got him. You got him away from the Phillies. You got him away from other teams you have to face. That's where you got to worry about too. You can't just worry about, oh, let's just get better. No. Like, you have to worry about the teams that are in on you. And is there anything happening right now? Let me just double check because my phone's going nuts right now. Hold on, guys. Yeah, but see, here's the problem, Easy, with Shane Bieber. What is Shane Bieber? He threw. This is his third rehab start. So what does that mean? I mean, I don't know how much it's going to be. I don't know. I think he's still under control for another year, if I'm not mistaken. He might be a free agent, but I'm not sure. He is a rental, right? That's what he said. He is a rental. So I don't know. Probably not a lot because there's no, evidence of him pitching at all in the majors this year. So I don't know. Like, is that the chance you want to make? You rather get a Shane Bieber, who is a big question mark, with a bunch of other guys that are injury prone and guys that can't go deep. You think Shane Bieber, they're going to let go deep for the final 2 months? You need a guy that can give you innings along with quality starts. You don't need another guy that you have to worry about taking him out after 80 pitches. It just doesn't make sense at all. So I don't understand why. I don't like that. Like, go out and get a guy like Amaro Kelly. Go get Sandy Alcantara. Go get another starting pitcher that's on the market that's a top 3. Like, I don't see the point of having another question mark in this rotation. And again, the Mets aren't making a trade for a guy that's not going to start the first 3 games of a series. They're going to get a guy that they know he's going to pitch in game 1, 2, or 3 of a series in the playoffs. That's it. So I just don't understand the Shane Bieber situation. I mean, I know why people are talking about it, but it is what it is. I don't see them doing that. That's the same reason why I don't think they're going after like a, well, I mean, Shane Bieber is a unique situation, but I don't think they're going after Zach Gallen because it's probably going to cost you a little bit more, in my opinion, or early for probably, I think a less of an upside with Gallen. I think Merrill Kelly. I don't think the Mets are going the rental route. Like, if they're going to get a starting pitcher, it's going to be somebody with control. They're going to be somebody who can pitch, who is a top 3 starter, no matter if they're pitching well or not, because people only care about the stats that they do this year, but teams don't look at it that way. If that's the case, then Sandy Alcantara would have no, there wouldn't be no conversations about him. Same thing for a lot of pitchers. Zach Gallen's having conversations because what he was or what he could be. Joel, that's wrong. That is wrong. He said it the other day in one of his last interviews he had. He said exactly that. He says, we're not going to make a trade unless we believe it's significantly better than what we currently have. What we currently have is nobody. Let's be quite honest about that. Sean Manaea, okay, fine. We'll see if he can last. We'll see if he can continue to build. And he pitched well yesterday. He got his pitch count a little bit higher, which is nice to see, right? Kodai Senga, don't let me even talk about him. He's just waiting to be a disaster every single time. Like, the way people talk about Kodai Senga, you think he's like, Jacob deGrom, the way people talk about him. Like, he reminds me of Syndergaard, all the flair, but none of the actual stats. Like, everybody looks at the ERA, yet he doesn't have enough innings to be like considered anything about the Cy Young or anything, a pitching type of award. Like, we only talk about ERA, but there's so much that goes involved over there. Kodai Senga is a big reason why this bullpen fell apart. Because 1, he's injury prone. 2, he never goes deep into games. And then when he does go deep into games, it's like, oh my God, look what he's doing. But a guy who gets extra days off needs to go give me 6 innings at least. throwing 100 pitches. Like, you can't throw 100 pitches in 5 innings, and I'm going to give you a standing ovation for that. And then people are going to say, well, it's a quality start. Yeah, but when you get a 6-day off and sometimes more than that, and you're out in the 5th inning, it's a waste of a start to me. It's just not good. And wait until you get to the playoffs, and then let's say if Kodai Senga is our best pitcher going through the rest of the season in August and September. Let's say we don't play in the wild card round. We end up right into the NLDS. We play, obviously it's a best out of 5. Do you think Kodai Senga is pitching game 1 and game 5 with only 4 days off after game 1? If he's starting game 1, there's no freaking way he's starting game 5. So that already puts you behind the 8 ball, because he'll pitch game 1. He won't be ready for game 5. Yeah, they'll say, oh, well, he'll be ready for NLCS game 1. Well, you got to get there. So that's the problem. Yeah, right now we are in a Dodgers-Padres bracket. And you know what? I feel more comfortable facing the Dodgers than the Padres. The Padres have our number. Like, the same way the Mets, for years had the Dodgers number in the playoffs. The Padres, the Mets don't match up well against the Padres for some reason. It just, at home or in San Diego, I don't know. It's weird. Like, you see the talent on the Padres, but they always seem to fall apart. But yet when the Mets face them, we make them look like World Series champs. Like, it's amazing. Like, we don't play well against the Padres. Like, everybody has a team that you don't match up well against. The Mets don't match up well against the Padres. It's unfortunate, but right now, yes, we are in the Dodger-Padre bracket. And again, we're only, a couple of games from the top spot in the National League. So, again, you got to try to get those top 2 spots. In my opinion, the best case scenario for the Mets is to have that bye. Be one of the 2 teams that have a bye. Because if you don't, you're going into a wild card series, you most likely might be home if you're a number 1 wild card team. And now you got to, win 2 out of 3 and use all your starting pitching in those first 3 games, your top guys. And then, you'd be getting Clay Holmes to start the NLDS or somebody like that. That's why I think it's imperative that if the Mets don't get a bat, I'm going to bitch and moan, but give me a starting pitcher. If you're going to, half-ass the bats on this market, and don't tell me there's no upgrade other than better than Tyrone Taylor, you're absolutely nuts. Or even Jeff McNeil for that matter. Technically, Tyrone Taylor. Let's just put Tyrone Taylor in that mix. Because until you get a second, until you are actually getting a second baseman or somebody like a Brandon Lau, I think McNeil is going to be your utility guy that plays everywhere. But Luis Robert, Cedric Mullins is offensively better than Tyrone Taylor. Doesn't matter which one. Both of them are upgrades offensively. They're just as good defensively. Some might argue some might be better. But I'm going to put them on the same plane defensively because I think that's fair to everybody. But offensively, it's not even close. The upside for Cedric Mullins and Luis Robert are just light years better than Tyrone Taylor. And again, the best Mets roster is with Tyrone Taylor being a 4th outfielder on this team, where you can bring him in late in games. If you want to take Juan Soto out of right field, he can play there. If you want to take Nimmo out of left field because he has no arm, do that. Like, that's what you can do here. Well, Patrick, that's the thing. Like, if it isn't obvious what the Mets think of Tyrone Taylor offensively, just watch last night's game. Like, they just put him in for defense when Juan Soto came out of the game, and his at-bat came up right after, and they pinched it for him. Now, I understand what Mendoza was trying to do here. He was trying to spark the offense. But he left himself 2 guys from your roster dead in the middle of the game. I'm not going to call that bad managing because I understand his logic and his idea of what he was trying to do. But it ultimately, shortened your roster. because now you're very limited of who you're going to have pinch hitting later in games, even though it didn't end up being anything because it was a blowout. But if it was a close game, where are you going? You know what I'm saying? You played Marte in the field that just came back from injury not too long ago, and you're risking that situation. Like it just didn't make sense. So, right away, when it comes to the offense, it showed its ugly colors again. And you know what? I'm glad it did, because this offense hasn't been consistent all year. Yet everybody and their mother is saying, I don't want this guy, I don't want that guy. Well, who do you want? Like, that's the problem. Like, nobody's coming up with other ideas or players. And I think a lot of us agree that Brandon Lau will probably be the best solid bet. He's having a good season. I do think that he would fit well in this team. I don't think, because obviously there's a risk with a Cedric Mullins and Luis Robert, 100%. 100% with that. I don't think there's a risk at all with Brandon Lau. I don't think so. But the numbers that he's putting up might cost us more because he has a club option after this year than Luis Robert or Cedric Mullins. So, take that into account. Like, would you rather pay more for a Brandon Lau or pay a tad bit less? Because I'm going to tell you this right now. Brandon Lau is going to be a Cunha plus, in my opinion. I think Cedric Mullins, which, again, the Mets haven't really been linked to Cedric Mullins. And I think a big reason, and Zach brought this up a few shows ago, was that, I don't think the Mets want another lefty in the lineup, which I don't like lefty match, mix and matching with lefty righties and stuff like that when it comes to pitchers on the mound. But the Mets care about that. So that's why I don't think you haven't heard anything with Mullins. Now, what I do think, if the Mets are steadfast and want a center fielder, like Brandon Lau is probably I think it's like a C option. Like, if they don't get either center fielder, they're going to try to pivot to Lau, in my opinion. I think Lau's third on there, probably 2-3 along with Cedric Mullins. I don't think they want a lefty. But that's why I think they're going hard after Robert, because it puts a righty in the lineup. He crushes lefties. And the big problem with this Mets lineup is that their left-handed batters are hitting better against lefties than their right-handed batters. The only one that's hitting well against lefties is Starlin Marte. Everybody else is terrible. Alonso, Lindor, Mauricio. I mean, it's crazy. All the right-handed bats, even Alvarez. The lefty bats have been better against left-handed pitching. So it's going to be very, very interesting what's going to happen here. And again, I said this a couple of shows ago. The Vientos for Luis Robert trade, I don't think David Stearns was comfortable making that trade. Again, some would do it. I said I would do it because I don't think one home run is going to change my mind about Mark Vientos. I think he's still a problem. When you hit your first home run, I know it should have been 2 home runs, but when you hit your first home run, and it was in a big spot, right? Not his fault that the pitching blew it, right? Not his fault, right? It was a really good moment for him, because you saw that all the frustration come out in that home run when he ran the bases. But he's not happy what's going on, his name getting talked about. But I think that trade with Luis Robert would have happened already if it was a 1-for-1 for Vientos and Robert. The reason why I think you're hearing Acuna's name now is because the White Sox know that the Mets are probably not trading Vientos for Robert. Now, that doesn't mean that Vientos is not going to be in another deal for somebody else, maybe a top 3 starter or even a big-time bullpen arm. So that's probably a possibility. But Luis Acuna, again, he's more of an asset as a trade piece than an asset on this team. You can find a base runner that can steal bases, who can pinch run late in games if you need a stolen base. You can have a guy on the bench that can play good defense in the defensive replacement situation. Like, those are you can find those guys. Luis Acuna isn't an asset on this roster that makes it worthwhile. He can hit. He shows no power. And a guy, why do you want Acuna coming off the bench if they're going to pinch hit? Wouldn't you want a better hitter coming off the bench as a pinch hitter in late in games? Like Acuna doesn't excite me coming up in the 7th inning, pinch hitting for whoever. Like it doesn't excite me. So I think Acuna best use for him is to trade him for something that is going to help this team. If you think that Acuna is more important or more beneficial and more of an asset to this team, then name the bat. Cedric Mullins, Luis Robert, Brandon Lau. Any one of those are upgrades. Because one, they're going to start in the lineup unlike Acuna. And they will provide, even if it's not great offense, it's better offense than what Acuna has given us. And it solves the situation and the problem that this team has had, which is nothing from center field offensively. Again, you're not losing anything defensively with any center fielder that we're talking about here. So we're just, I just feel, if you are only going to hit when you're in trade rumors, then what use are you? Well, I don't think it was just, he hit a home run because he was mad about his name being in trade talks. I'm not going to go that far. But when it's been 108 games and you got 7 home runs and you got 28, 29, or now he has 30 because he had a grand slam, 30 RBIs. Like, I can't wait until after August 1st and pray you're going to turn it around, because if you don't, you're stuck with what you have. Like, I don't think people realize that. Like, I think people are so focused on the fact that, how can you give up on a guy that has 4 more years of control and the potential? Well, potential doesn't make you win. It's actual stats. It's actually doing it. You can't wait until after the deadline and say, well, they're trusting Mark Vientos here. And then when the next 50 games are played and he doesn't do anything worth your while, who's playing over him? Oh, yeah, that's right. You don't have nobody. You can't have that. I'd rather you make the move, get guys in here. And I'm not saying trade Vientos. You can keep Vientos here and still make and get a bat, in my opinion. I think you can get a bat without trading Vientos. If that rubs people the wrong way, fine. But here's the other thing. There's a pretty good chance that Vientos isn't going to get much playing time at all. And again, you could put him as your DH. I don't mind that. But if he's going to be a 0, it's not benefiting us. But put another bat in this lineup while Vientos might not be doing well as the DH. At least you got another guy in here that can possibly be a little bit of a spark offensively. That's what I think we have to really talk about and think about. After tomorrow, after 6 p.m., you are stuck with your roster. Obviously, you got internal options, but I find it very hard to believe the Mets are going to bring somebody up middle of August because somebody's not playing well and hope for the best. It's a dangerous game to play. Because if that minor league player doesn't work out, you're going right back to the problem. I don't want to continue to go through the motions with these guys. And again, you can't have all 4 of these guys on the roster. You can't have Mauricio, Beatty, Vientos, and Acuna on August 1st on the roster. It doesn't work. The roster setup doesn't work with those guys on the roster. It just doesn't. Like, it just doesn't. Like, you have to make a decision, or at least one of them. I already said 2 of them. I think you have to pick 2 of these guys, keep them around, and use 2 as assets. I think it makes so much sense. Like, these guys are basically losing value by the day. Like, they're literally losing value by the day. Like, it's stupid to hold on to these guys and continue to have them on the roster, because clearly they're not helping you offensively, not enough. So the 2 guys that are kind of like on the back burner in Vientos and Acuna basically have shown no offense at all this year when Beatty and Mauricio have shown, they've shown a little bit more. I'm not saying a lot more, but more than those guys. The only thing Vientos has is last year. And if you care about last year's stats, that's great. But once he came up and took Beatty's spot, he was really good offensively. He was a big reason why the Mets went on their run last year. But he's a big reason why, a very big reason why, that the middle of this lineup from 5 through 9 was terrible for the majority of the year. Vientos was a big part of it. So, yeah, I agree, Mike. I don't think look, how many more guys do you want? The other day, other than Lindor and Soto, the entire lineup was homegrown Mets. Like, they said that on the broadcast. Like, how many more homegrowns do you want? Like, we got to stop this. Like, stop living and dying for homegrown talent. I don't care if you're homegrown or not. Is it a nice little story? Yeah, sure. You want to do a little documentary 10 years after his career is over? Great. Right? But everybody doesn't have to be David Wright. Like, David Wright was a homegrown Met, right? We all love him, but he ultimately didn't get it done. Maybe if the Mets brought in somebody from the outside that can help this team more, right? They had Beltran, they got Delgado, Cliff Floyd, right? But maybe in the years when they were collapsing, when they weren't doing enough at the deadlines in 07 and 08, a little bit more help might have been the difference instead of relying on guys that continue to fail. This is the problem. Met fans live or die consistently with guys that fail because they're homegrown. And again, Frank, you can talk about homegrown all you want, but Keith Hernandez wasn't homegrown. Gary Carter wasn't homegrown. Those were linchpins, leaders. Doc and Darryl weren't leaders. They were young kids that had great talent, but let's be honest, Keith Hernandez, Gary Carter were leaders on that team, big leaders. Ron Darling, right? Guys like that. Like you got to understand the fact that when it comes down to homegrown, it's a nice story, but it's only a great story when you win with those guys. Why do people talk about the Yankees dynasty? Do you think it's because of just the championships? No. It's special, even more special than seeing those banners because it was Jeter, it was Williams, it was Rivera, it was Posada. That's why, the core four. Those type of guys, right? Obviously, they brought in guys like Tino Martinez, Paul O'Neill, David Justice, guys like that. Like, well, Frank, I understand that. But nowadays, it's much harder to get these players for chump change. All right. And if you forget what happened, Keith Hernandez was going through a drug situation that he was basically indicted on stuff and going to court for stuff like that. So the Cardinals were looking to get rid of him because they didn't want to deal with the nonsense. Now, Gary Carter, on the other hand, that was a really good trade. I'll give credit for that. But let's not act like, Gary Carter and Keith Hernandez are walking through this door in a trade. Like, I'm not thinking about that. Brent Rooker and Mason Miller package, I mean, a shit ton. Excuse my language, but let's be honest. Yeah, Keith was a great player, but he was also in his mid-30s. Like, let's not act like he was 29 years old. You're getting guys like Cedric Mullins and Luis Robert that are 28, 29, 30 years old. Keith Hernandez was, his last hurrah was with the Mets. His final years was with the Mets, basically. I know he played a little bit after that, but he was nothing compared to what he was. Like, his best years weren't with the Mets. They were with the Cardinals. You can even say Gary Carter's best years was with the Expos, not the Mets. Like, they were on their final legs. Like, these guys were beaten down. Like, they were breaking down after 86. They won the championship, and they constantly had injuries. Why 87 didn't work out? Why 88? They got as far as they can, but they were a broken down team. They had Doc that wasn't the same in 86. They had Darryl Strawberry that was looking for a contract, was never going to get it from the Mets, and Frank Cashin. Like, there's a lot of things to look at when it comes to that. But I do understand why people glorify and like fall in love with homegrown talent. But I'm going to tell you this right now. There is too many Met fans that want to keep Pete Alonso because, he can be a lifetime. He can have the most home runs in Mets history. If that's your first opinion or reason to keep Pete Alonso, then that's the wrong reason. The same thing goes for anybody else's homegrown. I don't care about team history stats. That does nothing for me. Like, it just doesn't. The same thing goes for David Wright. I love David Wright, but come on. He didn't bring us nothing. He brought us a lot of good moments, and I think he would have been a Hall of Fame type player if he never got hurt. But, I mean, maybe if he was so much more healthier in 2015, he could have been a difference offensively in that lineup, but he was a shell of himself. The fact of the matter is, homegrown talent only matters is if they succeed and help you win a championship. Other than that, who cares? I don't care if he's the all-time home run leader in the Mets history. Like, I'm sorry, I don't care about that. Yeah, like, what did Jacob deGrom's Cy Young's got us? He couldn't wait to get out of wearing a Mets uniform. He didn't want to be in New York. One of the best pitchers we ever seen wearing a Mets uniform since Tom Seaver, basically. And he was a guy that didn't want to come back to New York. And the Mets were never giving him that type of deal. So, like, it's just, come on. We all forget, like Jesse Orozco, those guys, like, come on. Like, everybody wants to talk about the Darryl Docks and, the Lenny Dyksters of the world, even though he's a Philly guy. Like, it's just, we talk about that like, teams only win with homegrown talent. It's only a nicer story. I don't care about a nicer story. I really don't. Like, I just don't care. Carlos Beltran, right? We win a World Series. It wasn't about David, right? It wasn't about Jose Reyes. It was because the Mets made that big free agent move of Carlos Beltran. Like, I'm sorry. Like, and Bob, it's not about being cold. It's about reality. Like, we fall in love with these homegrown guys, and they never bring us nothing, and we still glorify them because we don't have nothing else to grab onto. That's the problem. Like, perfect example is Aaron Judge with the Yankees. Look, Yankee fans loved Aaron Judge. He's beloved. But if he never brings a championship to them, he's just going to be another Yankee that didn't get anything. He's going to be Don Mattingly. Yankee fans love him, but never brought him to the promised land. And it's not all his fault because obviously it's a team game, but that's where you're remembered. Aaron Judge would be like, wow, he won a lot of MVPs. He had this many All-Star games, this many Silver Sluggers, Triple Crown possibly. But if you don't have a World Series, you're not going to be with the monuments. Let's just be honest about that. Yeah, I think if you have to think about homegrown talent over everything else, then I don't know what to tell you. I just don't. Like, I can't have an actual conversation with you because I really don't think you want to win. Like, you would rather have Acuna here, and by the way, he's not homegrown. By the way, the same thing goes for some of these guys that we're talking about trading. Some of these guys were traded here. Like, I know about Mauricio. I know about this guy, Beatty and guys like that, and Vientos. Understandable. And I'm not saying that, these guys, put it this way, you can't just keep on waiting for these guys to figure it out. Like, at some point, Lindor is going to be 34, 35 years old. At some point, Pete Alonso, if he returns, is going to be 34, 35 years old. You can't lose the prime years of these guys, their best years, and just say, well, let's wait. You can't trade these guys. Let's see if they develop. Like, that's what the minor leagues is for. You can't try to win a championship and have 2 or 3 guys trying to figure out and develop at the major league level. It's very hard to win that way. Very hard. Like, this isn't a Michael Conforto situation when that was basically the Lone Ranger coming up from, as a homegrown guy that come up through from the minors and try to help this team offensively. Like, we're not talking about one guy here. We're talking about 2 or 3 guys. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, Beatty, Vientos, Acuna, and even Mauricio for that matter. Like, none of them has done enough to warrant staying here long term. And I do think a lot of people will favor Mauricio more than everybody else, which is understandable. But Beatty's got a ton of chances. Vientos basically was given the third base job. All he had to do was keep it. Even if he had a lesser year than last year, but was still hitting home runs, the conversation would never come up about trading Vientos. Acuna never plays. Why we have him on this roster? Get something for him. Like, it's the same revolving door of nonsense with this stuff. Like, do you want to win or not? Because sooner or later, you have to decide if you're going to be all in. There is no reason why this trade deadline you can't go all in. And again, you can trade 3 to 4 top 10 prospects and still have a very good farm system, and you don't have to cry about homegrown talent. Like, 2 of these guys might be off the roster that were that are prospects. I think you have to understand that. And we'll see. Like, I'm trying to check my phone and see what's going on let's see. Hold on, guys. Give me a second. My phone's going crazy again. I don't think anything happened because I think you guys would have said it in the chat. Well, Jose, sure. Of course, but every team can say Mets can win without making a move. Of course they can. You know, it's going to take a lot of hope and luck, just like every other team. But why not do anything and hope for that? The Mets did that in 2020, in last year, by basically not doing much. Getting Winker, getting a bullpen arm or 2, it ultimately not be enough. Because the thing that you really needed at the end was more starting pitching, but they didn't do that. So you half-assed the deadline. Again, 2022, you half-assed the deadline. Right? At the trade deadline, the New York Mets are one of the best teams in baseball. They might have had the best record in baseball at the deadline. Yet they half-assed the deadline with Naquin, Vogelback, Ruff, Givens, the reliever. Like, that's not good enough. Like, you could ultimately get your team better. Do it. There's nothing stopping them. You got the money and you got the prospects. Stop with this nonsense and prospect hugging. Because when they lose, I will definitely be the first person to say I told you so. Because I'm sick and tired of these goddamn prospect huggers. You are the worst type of fan. Like, stop living and dying off of prospects. It's not the end all be all. Right? If it was so important and so beneficial to ultimately winning championships, there would be more teams like the Yankee dynasty. Look at the World Series champions. Where's their homegrown talent? Do the Dodgers have any? They've won 2 world championships in the last 5 years. Look at the teams that won. The Braves. Yeah, mostly homegrown talent, but what ultimately got them over the top? The trade deadline of that year. With Jorge Soler, with Adam Duvall. The Rangers last year, look at the moves they made. Who was their ace? It wasn't homegrown talent. It was Nathan Eovaldi, who they signed. Trades they made. Ultimately, it can be a combination. I think ultimately you need a combination of homegrown and, out of your team and sign these guys and trade for these guys. Like, it can be a combination. But there is nothing that proves to me since the Yankee dynasty, and even then, they made deals at the deadline. Like, the Yankees don't win the 2000 World Series if it wasn't for David Justice. Right? David Wells, David Cone. Like, we forget about this stuff. Everybody just likes to talk about it, but it's trades at the deadline. It's off-season acquisitions. It's signing the right guys, signing big names. Like, that's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to win the championship. Anything less than that is a failure. You know, we got to stop having years like last year where we go into a season saying, yeah, we're okay. We're decent, but I don't expect to win a championship. There's hardly any expectations. Like, no. Like, I want to go into a season having expectations and being there at the end. If that's not the ultimate goal, then I don't know what you guys want to do. Exactly, easy, 100%. Right? And the reason why that PCA trade was so embarrassing and so stupid was because that team wasn't good enough. The difference now, this team is good enough. That's why you can make a trade like that. That's why there should be nobody untouchable. Like, from Jet Williams to any of the pitchers. Now, that's not Stern's MO to trade, prospect pitchers. He does, especially the top ones. He doesn't do that. So I'm not expecting him to do so, which I think is ultimately stupid, in my opinion. I'm not saying trade all three of them, but I think you can, your goal, your whole job is to evaluate which ones are going to be good. Like, don't tell me, all three are going to be good. Like, I should slap you in the face, because there's a pretty good chance one of them might turn out to be a top 2 starter. And the other ones might be back rotation arms, possibly bullpen. So I don't want to hear that. Well, explosive, of course not. Like, there was no guarantee PCA would have, came up with the Mets and performed like he is with the Cubs. But that trade was dumb because the Mets weren't close. We've talked about it. The Mets don't have 3, 4, 5 holes. Go back to that team. They had rotation holes. They had bullpen holes. They had like 3 different areas where it was just a complete zero. The Mets don't have 3 or 4 holes, especially in the lineup. They have 1 hole. If you want to call it 2, let's call it 2. But not much. It's not 3 or 4 or 5. So, if you want to really call Mauricio the third base guy, now fine. But center field is a major hole. If you consider that their only big hole offensively, then do what you need to do to get that. I feel that if the Mets don't get, I'm going to be 100% with you guys. The Mets can get the best reliever left on the market. Let's say if Johan Duran, right? They find a way to get him, put him right behind Edwin Diaz. You got 2 closers in the back end, and even Gregory Soto for that matter. But you got a elite 8th and 9th, and you don't get a bat for center field, and let's say they do get a starter, even if it is Alcantara or anybody that's a top flight guy, I'm not going to be as happy, even though I've been clamoring for pitching. I would be like, okay, that is really good. But the biggest problem from this team, at least according to all these fans, right? You came on my channel for months saying, Rob, stop talking about the pitching. The offense is the problem. Yet there would be more people happy with those pitching moves if the Mets don't get a bat. And then it's going to be the same problem. No, Sal, Robert isn't a fit because he's available. He's a fit because he's better than Tyrone Taylor. That's why. Not because he's available. And it's nice that he's available, but let's be honest. Most of the guys that we're talking about are upgrades offensively for Tyrone Taylor. And yes, I know Emerson, the Mets are in on Miller. I don't think the Mets, because you're going to have to give a lot for Mason Miller, a ton. I don't think the Mets are just going to do that for one guy when they got other holes. Like, ultimately, I don't think Mason Miller is going to make a dramatic difference because the biggest problem with this team is that their rotation don't go deep into games. So you're ultimately losing the guys that are good a lot more, which ultimately makes them tired, makes them overused, and makes them not good. So everybody wants to talk about bullpen arms. That's well and great. But if you don't do nothing with this rotation, you're going to have the same problems because none of them go deep into games except for David Peterson. He's been the most reliable going deep. Now, I think ultimately, hopefully, Sean Manaea can be that guy, but there's still no guarantee of that. No, Frank, but again, you don't listen. I never said. And by the way, they're on the same wavelength defensively. Again, there's probably a good reason why you don't think those guys are not as good or if not better than Tyrod Taylor defensively because you don't watch them enough, right? Over the last couple of months, I've watched Robert Jr. defensively a lot. Cedric Mullins, both of them can go get it with the best of them. They got tremendous speed, just like Tyrod Taylor. They can get to balls. That's not a problem. But ultimately, you're not getting a center fielder for defensive purposes. If that was the case, you wouldn't be worrying about center field. You'd be keeping Tyrod Taylor in center field. But because the offense has been so bad and you can't wait around for somebody to figure it out, you need, when you're bottom three with runners in scoring position in the league, and it's game 109 today, you can't wait around and tell me you don't need a bat. And then when we don't get a bat, if you're going to be okay with that, you're nuts. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, the whole point of going for a center fielder was to get the possibility of getting better offense. Even with the numbers and the years both of these guys are having in Robert and Mullins, is better than Tyrod Taylor. Like, we don't get that. Why doesn't people get that? People are talking about, well, he only has this many home runs. Well, how many home runs does Tyrod Taylor have? So he has double that. Like, Cedric Mullins isn't a big power hitter. So if you only care about home runs, then all right, you're probably going to go with Robert. But Cedric Mullins does more. He can use his speed. He puts the bat on the ball a lot more than Tyrod Taylor does. Tyrod Taylor is a strikeout machine. He has terrible at-bats. So, yeah, Taylor has 2 home runs. Even Mullins has more than that. I haven't even checked Mullins' stats because I don't believe the Mets are going after Mullins because I think they're trying to avoid a left-handed bat, as I said earlier. And once again, guys, thank you for tuning into the Amazing Mets pregame show that turned into a trade deadline show because, well, the Mets are trying to salvage the series here. And we'll try to end this in a little bit because at 6 o'clock tonight, it's 110% all about a Mets trade watch because there's been a lot of reports stating that something's going to go down. Something's going to happen. Maybe tonight we might hear more. I don't know I think something's going to at least happen tonight. I don't know if it's going to be the big move we're listening or we're waiting for, but it might be, a solid move that the Mets make. So at 6 o'clock tonight, we'll probably stay on for about 2. During the Mets game, it's going to be late in the game. So it'll be kind of like a de facto post game while we're watching, having a trade watch party like we did a couple of days ago. I think that's kind of cool. It was a lot of fun the last time. And again, guys, there's over 400 people in the stream right now. So you guys care. You guys want something to happen. They want moves. They want good moves. Right? There is not 400 plus people in this stream, and there ain't going to be hundreds of people in other Mets streams today and tomorrow because we don't want things or we don't want to get better. We do want to get better. Met fans believe in this team, but you also got to give what extra and give something that they need going forward. You got to help this team out. You got to give reinforcements here. You can't half-ass another deadline and hope for the best. The Mets do that way too often. And it's frustrating as hell. And again, all the reports are stating the Mets and David Stearns is really aggressive. Now, what does that mean? I'm assuming David Stearns, there might be maybe 3 guys untouchable in this farm system, but I don't think he's afraid to make a move. And that's coming from me. over the last couple of days, we've heard more and more reports that the Mets are very aggressive. They're front runners for a lot of guys. You know, they're like the top 3 teams in on Duran, in on Mason Miller, top 2 guy front runner for Luis Robert. Like, they're in the mix. They're top 3 in a lot of guys. Now, that ultimately going to get those guys, we'll just have to wait and see. Yeah, Christopher, exactly. Sacrifices have to be made. And again, I don't think a good deadline to me is being a little bit uncomfortable. You know, that one prospect that because I'm going to tell you this right now, guys, there will be a bunch of Met fans. If Acuna gets traded for Luis Robert, there are going to be a bunch of Met fans that hate the trade. How can you trade Acuna like Acuna's done anything for this team except for maybe 2 or 3 games this year? They're going to be pissed off that Acuna is gone, and that's all. They'll live on that for the rest of the year, regardless if Luis Robert plays well. Like, how many Met fans, and there was a lot of them, and I talked about this a few shows ago, when the Mets made the trade for Yoenis Cespedes. And again, by no means am I saying Luis Robert is comparable to Yoenis Cespedes. I'm not saying that. And Frank, you got to gamble. Stop thinking you don't have to gamble. Like, you want to just stay status quo. Let me see if I can fleece every team, which it's not going to happen. The Mets fleeced the Orioles for Gregory Soto for basically nothing. I was shocked that that's all you gave. That was the high leverage arm that was sought after. But Stearns was aggressive and got him early. So you got to be a little uncomfortable. Like, you got to take a gamble. Michael Fulmer for Yoenis Cespedes was a huge gamble for Sandy Alderson. That's why it took to the final minutes of the deadline in 2015, because it was a gamble. They did not want to give Michael Fulmer. This is so similar to this situation now. And again, I'm not comparing Luis Robert or anybody with a bat, even Brandon Lau, to Yoenis Cespedes. I'm not doing that. But when you see, the Mets didn't have Soto in 2015. They didn't have an Alonso. They didn't have a Nimmo. They didn't even have a Lindor. The team they got the Lucas Dudases, the Wilmer Flores, a broken down David Wright, a Michael Kadire that was old, a young Travis d'Arnaud that was trying to find his footing, a Juan Lagares in center field, a Daniel Murphy that nobody really knew could do what he did in the playoffs, but he was a solid ball. He was a professional ball player. But that was it until the playoffs. The Mets don't win the division if it wasn't for Yoenis Cespedes. The Mets didn't go on that run if it wasn't for Murphy and Cespedes. Like, you have to understand that. Like, if you just make minor moves and think that's going to ultimately push you over the top. Now, not saying it can't, but it's a bigger risk making minor moves than making bigger moves and think it's more of a risk. It's not. I'd rather get the players that is going to help your team and fill the holes. Don't give me the third guy. Let's say Cedric Mullins and Luis Robert are the top 2 center fielders on the market. Don't give me the third guy that is subpar and probably worse than them and think that you're going to get excited for it because you didn't give up anything for it. Like, that's not the way to go about a trade deadline. It's just not. So I think the way baseball is set up now, like, just go through the last 5 years of teams that made the World Series and the teams that won the World Series. What was the difference? The difference was their trade deadlines. How did Jack Flaherty pitch in a World Series? How did Tommy Edman do in the NLC, in the playoffs, but in the NLCS and the World Series in particular? Right? Those are trades. And Tommy Edman wasn't a world beater, but he was a solid player that fit the Dodgers perfectly in the holes they had. The same thing goes for Jack Flaherty. Like, it's not the most impressive move. And by no means am I saying Luis Robert is a blockbuster. I'm not. but it's the filling of the holes with solid ball players, or at least the best on the market, the few best that are on the market in that particular area in regards to center field. You do it. You don't tell me that McNeil and Taylor in center field is going to excite anybody, because I've said this from the beginning. If McNeil's going to get the majority of the starts in center field, there's going to be a big game where he messes up defensively because he's not a center fielder. Let's be honest about that. Has he done a decent or pretty decent job? Yes. But there's going to be a big game where he makes a defensive mistake, and it's going to cost us. And then people are going to bitch, oh, well, you didn't want to get anybody that was actually good defensively and the possibility of having a higher reward offensively. Like, that's how you have to go about it. Get better. Robert and Mullins are better than Tyrone Taylor offensively. We can argue to the cows come home about defensively who's better, but they're very, very good defensive players, if not just as good. Same thing goes for the rotation. I don't want a Paul Blackburn type. Merrill Kelly would be a solid addition. I would have no problem with that. But the Mets don't want him as a rental. I don't think it's about his age. I think it's more about a guy that's under control, especially with a high reward. That's where I think they're going. That's why you haven't heard a word about the Mets and Merrill Kelly over the last couple of days. You heard more about the Marlins. You heard more about, a little bit even more about, you heard more about the Mets and Joe Ryan and the Twins than you are, when it comes to Merrill Kelly. So it's going to be crazy. Let's see. Let me just check. Well, yeah, Sal, sure. But what did the Dodgers do? They pinpointed what they needed, right? They got a couple of bullpen arms. They filled their holes. There was other teams that made bigger moves, but it was the holes that they filled with solid players, not great players, solid players. And they ultimately made the difference. Like, that's what it ultimately was. The Rangers, the same thing. The Braves, the same thing. Like, we just forget about that part. And it's like, come on. Like, the trade deadline can make or break. Nobody can tell me that in 2022, the Mets half-ass deadline did not cost them. That team was dying for reinforcements. It's not like they were like tremendously injured. I know DeGrom was coming back in the second half. There was guys that were kind of, they were kind of like running on fumes. They needed reinforcements. It didn't excite anybody in that roster, in that clubhouse, when they got the guys they brought. You had to do better. There was better guys out there. And everybody could say, well, JD Martinez had a back issue. Yeah, did you see his second half? Yeah, that could have been for the Mets instead of Vogelback. Like, that one move could have made a difference. Not saying it would have, but I would have took my chances with a JD Martinez with a messed up back than Vogelback basically terrible. He was terrible in the wild card series. He was terrible down the stretch. He was good for a little while, and then he was just terrible. Darren Ruff, you want me to even bring him up? Tyler Naquin, you want me to talk about him? Like, and you know what? Laureano would be decent. Again, I'm only bringing up Luis Robert because the Mets have been the front runners, according to reports. So that's where we are with that. And again, if they don't get Robert, he'll probably go to the Phillies. And the Mets will pivot to probably a Laureano or a Mullins. Laureano, again, they'll probably be in on Laureano more. That's why they're front runners for Robert, because they want a right-handed bat that is a center fielder or that can play center field. Yeah, UDL. And just think, that was only, 3 years ago? Like, it's crazy to me. So I just want people to understand that if you want to stay pat or make minor moves, there's a pretty good chance you're going to get the same results you've got when you half-ass the deadline. I don't see a team that has half-assed the deadline and have gone to the World Series and win the World Series. Like, it's rare. If it does happen, you got very lucky. And I would take luck. give me a World Series banner, I'll take luck every day of the week, but it really doesn't work out sometimes. So the game's about to start, guys. Again, 6 p.m. Mets Trade Watch on the channel and on X. If you're here right now, we have over 440 people in the stream right now on YouTube and on X. If you're hitting that like button, I appreciate that. If you subscribed, I also appreciate that. But there's more to come, guys, on the channel and on X. Make sure you stay on the stream here, because once this stream is over, it's going to redirect you right to that Mets Trade Watch stream at 6 p.m. Do me a favor, hit that like button, because the more likes we get prior to the stream, the more people will see this stream and will click on that stream. And again, it's a lot more fun when there's a lot more people in the chat, guys. And you guys have done a great job showing up on these shows, and I do appreciate it. Even though I don't agree with you all the time, you don't agree with me. That's okay. Difference of our opinions aren't, the worst thing in the world, right? I think the ultimate goal is we all want to win, even if we have different routes getting there. So with that said, guys, we got Clay Holmes on the mound, Mr. 5 innings, against Yu Darvish, who has been terrible. Like, the Mets need to win this ball game tonight or today. They do. They got to find a way to win. You got to salvage the series. You can't get swept. Don't get swept. That would suck. Like, that would just put a sour taste in my mouth going through the trade deadline, where I just want more from David Stearns and the moves that I hope he makes. Like, win today, salvage the series. It would be a 3-3 road trip, which would be fine. When you go on the road, especially the West Coast, you try to get back 500. Like, that's the minimum. Like, it's not easy to go on the West Coast. It's not, road trips suck. You want to try to be 500 on the road trip, and then you dominate at home. That's how good teams win. That's how you get the 95 plus wins. Like, that's how you do it. So, will Clay Holmes die out in the 5th inning again? Because that's been his MO. That's been what he's done. He's running on fumes. More of a reason why I want another starter in here, so you can throw Clay Holmes to the bullpen. I think that's going to be the case. Not only to protect his innings, but I think he ultimately is going to be better for us in the bullpen. I think the Mets do make one more bullpen moves. I don't know. Again, we heard about Joan Duran. That's a possibility. There are 3 or 4 teams that are involved in that. Is it a Griffin Jackson, Minnesota? That could be a possibility as well. There's other guys out there. I'm not really concerned about bullpen. I think the Mets are going to get us, even if they don't get Duran. I think they're going to get a very solid bullpen arm as well. I think look for another righty. It's going to be a right-handed pitcher, in my opinion. If you do that and you get a starter, and let's say you get one of the center fielders, depending on what the names are, I think you're going to be very okay. I think it's going to be a really good deadline. But I don't see us leaving a hole. Like, I truly think that if they don't get a rotation arm that's a top 3 arm, even a potential top 3 arm, I'm going to be very upset, because I don't trust this rotation as far as I can throw them, guys. And I got a very messed up elbow, so it ain't going to go very far. So, Nimmo, Vientos, Lindor, Alonso, McNeil, Alvarez, Mauricio, Beatty, Taylor. For all you prospect huggers, a lot of homegrown talent there, right? You should be excited. But they don't score runners in scoring position. So enjoy that lineup, right? Obviously, Juan Soto is not in the lineup. He fouled the ball off his leg, and it's a contusion, right? There's no damage. He's day-to-day. So he gets today off, and he'll probably, I would be shocked if he's feeling okay. He'll come up in a big spot if he's going to pinch hit. That could be a possibility. So that's your lineup for today with no Juan Soto. He's day-to-day with the contusion on his leg, his foot, whatever. He's going to get mostly, he's not starting today. He has the off day tomorrow as the Mets head back home. This is where the Mets, somebody, I don't care who, somebody needs to step up, or a couple of guys need to step up and make sure they don't lose today, right? You kind of put the Giants out of their misery. You didn't really do that with the Padres. You're kind of making them hover a little bit, which is kind of annoying. And right now we're in the Dodger-Padre bracket, which I don't like facing the Padres. Like, I'm more comfortable facing the Dodgers because I think the Mets play well against the Dodgers. I think they match up better for some apparent reason. They don't match up well against the Padres at all. So just do what we need to do. win this ball game, salvage the series, come back home with a 3-3 West Coast trip. I think everybody would be okay with that. It's not great. It's not terrible. You survived it. You got through it. And then we can have the off day tomorrow, hoping for more quality players to add to this team, ultimately add into a top 3 team in baseball. So with that said, guys, there is no post game because obviously at 6 o'clock, we got the Mets trade watch. And that's kind of going to be late in the game, around 6th, 7th inning probably. Maybe later. Who knows if it goes quick. And we'll be watching the game together, just seeing what's going on. We're talking about the game. We're talking about if any moves are happening or potential moves and all that fun stuff as well. So enjoy the game, guys. I'll see you at 6 o'clock. Once again, if you're in the stream right now, wait. It's going to redirect you after I end the stream. It's going to redirect you to the Mets Trade Watch show at 6 p.m. Hit on that like button early, guys. The more likes we get early, the more people, the more eyes are all going to be over this stream, and it's going to be a lot more fun that way. Have a good day, guys. Enjoy the game. Let's go Mets. And let's see what David Stern's got cooking for us later today, guys. Let's go Mets.
Seven train rumble, headed to the field. Orange and blue vibes, the energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, repping both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire misunderstood. Hear 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite.